Hey, this is Paul the Model Lazenby, and you're listening to AngryMarks.com.
And you're not just listening to him on the bumper as we come back from commercial break. You're listening to him live on the air right now because the Model Paul Lazenby is joining us on the air. Paul, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Yeah, we got to re-record that bumper before I leave, man. I don't sound anywhere near excited enough, man. This is the freaking Angry Marks podcast, for God's sake. I sound like I'm about to fall asleep. That's bullshit.
Well, we'll be happy to re-record it. That's not a problem. But I know if you want to be angry, you can certainly talk about the Ring of Honor pay-per-view because you were raining down hellfire and brimstone on Twitter when that pay-per-view was on the air.
Oh, it's just a source of frustration for me, man, because Ring of Honor is awesome. I think they're the best wrestling company on the planet. They got so much talent in the locker room, and yet they just continue to shoot themselves in the foot by having these shows that last freaking forever. You know, you give the fans too much, and it's like giving somebody too much food to eat. They're not going to want to come back for a long time because they're not hungry. And, you know, a lot of these matches just went way too damn long, wrung the crowd out to the point that when you finally get around to Edwards versus Richards, which is the blow-off of, 2 years of build, by the time they get around to the finish in a 40-minute match that should have been 20, they get a golf clap. So it just really broke my heart because those guys are so talented and they were busting their ass in the ring. And there were some good things about it. I mean, I would give the pay-per-view overall about a 7 out of 10, but it could have been so much more, and it definitely didn't feel like the biggest show of the year.
No, and I agree with you. By the time that match was over, it was getting close to midnight or past midnight on Eastern time, as I recall, and I was feeling bad for those poor fans at the Hammerstein Ballroom. I could understand why they were lacking energy and feeling like they could just muster up a golf clap, because it doesn't matter how good a match is when you're going past midnight. You're just tired and ready to go to bed. It's no way to watch a show, and I'm not even sure that
the vibe in the building was kind of low-key anyway. It was just one of those weird nights where the crowd wasn't particularly responsive. They weren't being douchebags. They just, for whatever reason, they weren't responding. And it wasn't due to the guys underworking in the ring or the fans being assholes. It just was one of those things where it wasn't in the air that night.
No, and there were matches that definitely didn't need to be as long as they were or necessarily even take place. I mean, the Gauntlet, they could have done without that altogether, and then even if the main event was still 40 minutes, it wouldn't have seemed like such a long night without that stupid Gauntlet.
I know, we didn't need, I mean, whatever they're doing with the Bravado Brothers, they you know, obviously they didn't need to get another match in their losing streak on this show. They could have done it on any show. Coleman and Alexander, I haven't understood their push at all. I think that they're both great athletes, but I believe Alexander is the older one, am I correct? Or is Coleman is the older one?
Yeah, and one of them's the Preacher. That's the only other thing I know about him.
Yeah, the older gentleman's the Preacher. And that dude is such a great athlete, but his timing and his footwork and his body English are so awkward, it takes me right out of the match. I don't understand their push. I think that guy needs to do some, he's obviously been in the business a long time, but he needs to do some work to smooth his stuff out. Overall, you're right. That match was unnecessary, although one mid-card match I do think served a pretty solid purpose was Roderick Strong against Chris Hero. It was really nice to see. I actually just finished talking with Chris online before you guys called, and he worked me too. I didn't know he was going to be on the show. I just bitched him out. But it was nice to see a surprise appearance from him, and it also kept Roderick in the eye of the fans as opposed to risking him fading into the woodwork. So I was happy that one was there, and it was an appropriately timed match too. It didn't go over long. He's done steroids or whether he hasn't, that issue completely aside, this is a dude who's done a lot of World's Strongest Man type training. He's actually done World's Strongest Man events like the Conan's Wheel and the Power Stairs to build the physique that he's got. So he's put on a lot of muscle that his body wouldn't otherwise be carrying, whereas Brock, his body very naturally accommodates that amount of muscle. I was cage side for Overeem versus Verdum, and I was shocked at how quickly Overeem faded in that fight, how quickly he was showing signs of having cardiovascular distress. So I think that the longer this fight goes, the more it's going to favor Brock. And then, again, shameless self-plug here, the interview that I did with Boss Rutan for paullazenby.com, which you can still find on the site on fight page at paullazenby.com. That opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that was going on behind the scenes with the Golden Glory team. And whereas before this would have been what I call a Sophie's Choice kind of fight, where it's difficult to cheer for one guy because I like them both so much, I still respect Alistair as a fighter. I still like to watch him fight. But with a lot of the stuff that's been going on with Golden Glory that's come to light recently, now I have no problem picking favorites, and I'm going with Brock.
Peter, what's your pick?
I'm actually going to go with Alistair Overeem. I think he's going to catch Brock in the first round. The fight won't go to 2 rounds because Brock hates to get hit, and Overeem is a hell of a striker. It is your classic striker versus wrestler. 9 times out of 10, the wrestler wins. This is the one time where the wrestler loses.
I remember, this is just one example, and it's maybe a bad one because it's a guy who ended up dying from his drug use, but a bodybuilder named Andreas Munzer back in the 90s had a car accident, and he was in bed for 9 months. When he came back to bodybuilding competition, he was about 15 pounds of solid muscle heavier. He was taking all the same drugs as before, training the same way, but because his body was forced to rest, he came back that much more rejuvenated, and his body responded to the training, I think, in a different way that doesn't involve steroids. GSP is going to be the same kind of situation where he's going to come back, his knee's going to be stronger than ever. He's obviously got access to the best rehab techniques and the best doctors, and his body will be benefiting from that time taken off from hard training, and he's going to be a handful for whoever they put across from him.